Good afternoon. Wanted to do a video. I'm gonna be doing a little sharpening, but the video's not really about sharpening. It's wanted to talk about shop projects, and what sort of brought this to mind was for the past couple of weeks I've been not really doing anything woodworking related because I've been in my garage trying to get it really organized, and main thing is we had a lot of things in here that shouldn't have been in here, and it almost seemed every time I got them cleared out, they ended up back in here, or different things ended up back in here that I didn't want. My wife parks in here, and I noticed that she would be getting in the car, like sort of like shimmying sideways, and I wanted all of that gone. So that's really what I've been doing, and a lot of it involved getting certain tools that I like to keep in here, like garden tools. I mean, we do have a garden shed, but there's a lot of things in there that I'd rather have in there than the garden tools, because the garden tools are smaller and they take up less space. Like, we keep our bikes out there. We keep, I have a generator. I keep the generator out there, things like that. So I've been mainly concentrating on getting things on the wall, whenever possible, and been doing that around. I've had this track system for years that what I did was I just added on to it. I went to Home Center and picked up a couple more pieces of the track, more of the holders and things like that, and so all my free time over the past 15 days has been doing that whenever humanly possible. So, but what I wanted to talk about was, while I do some sharpening, is shop projects, because one of the things I did is I gave away a fair amount of tools over the past couple days. For instance, I found I had, I didn't count, but it was more than a dozen hand saws. And almost all of them were given to me by people, quite a few very good ones actually. But I really only use, and I'm talking panel size saws. Like this saw here. This is a Distin that was given to me. This is one of the panel saws I would use frequently. I also have a rip saw, and then a Superior, and a couple other over here. And these are the only hand saws I ever really used. So all of the other ones were saws that I never used. Some of them needed restoration. Some of them I actually did restore, but never bothered using them. So I decided, excuse me, just for a second. Here's another, while I'm talking about saws, here's another really good size saw to have. It's I believe this is a 20-inch, if I'm not mistaken. 16-inch, I call that. It's a really nice saw to have in your house, even if you're not really you're not really into building furniture. But it's a great carpentry saw. This is a crosscut saw that I sort of cleaned up. I didn't go nuts with it. But the point being, I got rid of, it was 8 paddle saws, a gent saw that I have no idea where I got it, and a couple back saws that I had that I once again, one of them I remember, if you remember, there used to be this thing called the Craftsman Club, and they had, when you purchase so many whatever at Sears Hardware or whatever, you got rewards points. And I remember this one saw. It was actually a nice saw. It was really for a miter box, but the rewards were expiring, so I bought it because it was there, and I already have one of those, so I gave that to somebody. I gave away a couple other different bash saws, and among other things, I found extra screwdrivers, things from my old job that I really just want it out. Um, that being said, I'm not. There's an argument that you can have too many tools, which I believe is true if you don't have the space for them. If you have the space, go nuts, do whatever you want. And here I'm just trying to maximize my space. But what I really wanted to talk about was shop projects, because I have a big Craftsman toolbox. It's a 42 inch, and I was contemplating getting the base for it, and that would really pretty much solve every one of my tool needs, my tool storage needs. I have a wall, you can't see it from here, I have a wall cabinet. It was an old kitchen cabinet from my wife's work that one of the contractors they gave to me. Just a second. Not sure why that's in there. And I said before, I've been talking about getting rid of my table saw, or at least moving it out of my garage, just to save space. And where the table saw is, where I usually keep it, I mean, this wall cabinet hangs, and it's just really not. I mean, it's a kitchen cabinet, so it's obviously not. It's obviously not meant for specifically for tools. So if I get this base cabinet, everything in there can go, and then it will really open up a lot of space. And what got me on this topic was somebody had asked me, well, why don't you just build a base for the toolbox? And the reason is I personally I despise shop projects, and I think they are a huge waste of time and effort. Now, before you can say, well, what about shelves? Now, of course, you really can't buy shelves. Well, you can, but I mean, shelves are pretty much always going to be custom. You measure what space you have, you cut it to length, and you install your brackets. But in terms of tool storage, I'm not a proponent of buying or building all of these different tool storage units. You'll see them in woodworking magazines and on the internet, on everywhere from Instagram to YouTube. You'll see all these projects. Make your own shop, make your own toolbox, your cabinet base, drawer, all these pretty fancy drawers for under your workbench. I just find doing that to be just an absolute waste of time, because I did it in the past. And there was one day in particular that really stood out, and I'll never forget this. It's one of those weird things that just like is sort of stuck in my mind. It was May. I believe it was May, because it was really nice out. It was one of those days. It was like the first really nice day of the spring we had, and my daughter wanted to go to the park, one of the national parks that's nearby my house, and I was making this wall. It was, I wish I still had it. I'd show it. It was basically a rack, a thin rack, that it was going to go in between. It was going to fit over the trim of the window right above my workbench here, and you drilled the holes in it, sawed out a little like 1/2 inch turf in between each hole, and then you chamfered it, and it was in Popular Woodworking magazine. That I know for certain. This project, I mean, and that wasn't even a project; it was a suggestion. And I just remember for some reason thinking, "Oh, I should build this." And at one point, I'm boring the holes with. I was using just I think I was using a hand drill, but I'm boring the holes in, and then like there'd be even with the backer underneath, there'd be a little bit of tear out, and you had to plane it off. And I remember just looking up, and my daughter saying, "Yeah, Daddy, when are we going to leave?" And I look out the window, and I see this absolutely beautiful day, and I was just like, what the frig am I doing? Why am I wasting my valuable time doing this when I could go buy a rack that will do everything this rack did and take me 5 minutes to install? And that really just hit me, and I just remember I did finish it, but I remember one day looking at it and just literally ripping it off the wall. I was so mad at myself for wasting hours of a beautiful morning doing that garbage. So it was at that point that I basically decided that I would never do a shop project again, because we get stuck in this mentality of build, don't buy. I can get behind that to an extent, but I also can get behind the mentality of live your life. Don't spend your time making something that is inconsequential. It's going to take you hours to make, and you can very easily buy something that will last you 30, 50 years, that will do the same as that thing for a quarter of the cost. It's just stupid. And that, I think it was that day that that I really I started to really question the philosophy being put forth by woodworking writers. And I found what I discovered is most of them, they're nothing but glorified salespeople. And I have nothing against salespeople in the least. I do have a problem with shysters, and that's what most of them are. And am I offending somebody? I really don't care. I found most of these. I'm gonna do my Leatherman. I haven't sharpened this in quite a while, so I figured it'd be a good time. But to back on topic, I just, and I get it. You're trying to fill the pages, which is cool. You have a magazine to put out. You're doing every article's not going to be an absolute home run gem. That being said, you don't need to sell a philosophy for a I'm sorry, almost used a bad word there. You don't have to create a philosophy for a wall rack. It's just so absurd. And what I found really absurd about it was how many people bought into it and are still buying into it to this day. So that's really, that right there was the end of my obsession, so to speak, with making shop projects. I'll never make one again if I can't buy it. And that includes jigs, wall racks, tool racks, chisel, you name it. I'll never ever make one again if I can, if I have no choice. If I have the choice, I mean, because it was just I like to think I'm fairly smart, like everybody does, but I found myself being conned, and I didn't grow up. I'm not. Once again, I don't offend anybody, but I'm not a rube. I grew up in North Philly, and I not too many people can pull one over on me, and I got one pulled over on me right there, and I just it will never happen again, because I really what really upset with me with that was not that I got fooled into building this stupid project because a woodworking magazine told me to, but because I allowed it to come between me and my daughter, and that really upset me so much that I remember I actually wrote, I think I wrote a blog post about it then, which, of course, when I wrote it, at that time, there were a handful of woodworking writers that followed my blog, and they came down on me, and not they, subtly, but of course, they're not going to, they're not going to go crazy. At least not as crazy as I did. But it's just, as I said, it really just, it was like really like a punch in the face. When I looking up, it's like looking at, it couldn't have been more fitting if I looked up and looked in a mirror rather than looked out my window. But looking out the window and seeing this beautiful day and having my daughter upstairs waiting for me to get finished so she could spend time with me, that really just, that really is, it was very, I felt horrible, put it that way. So, that all being said, there are certainly some shop projects that are worth making, and really two to me. One is a workbench, because in general, it is a lot less expensive to make a workbench than it is to buy one, and by a pretty large factor. Now, keep in mind, you can go nuts and really spend a fortune on a workbench, even if you're making it, by buying, I see there's certain, I'm not going to name any company names, but there are certain vices that are very, very expensive that, they can run upwards of $400 or $500 for one vise. And then I see people make their benches out of, exotic woods, or even, or hard maple, which is not cheap anymore. Things like that, beech. If you're going that route, and you might end up spending more money than you would if you purchased a pre-made bench from, I guess, like Lee Nielsen still makes benches, and is it Sjöbergs? I don't know. I'm probably saying that name wrong. The Swedish company, I guess Sjöbergs. I'm not a, like I said, I grew up in North Philly. My ability to mimic, my ability to mimic an accent is not great. But that and the other project I would suggest making is a wall cabinet, if you are planning on storing your tools in a cabinet, or not just tools, but things like stain, finish, your lubricating oils, all that. And the reason I say that is because a wall, I think, and you can see in the shot here, I made this wall cabinet years back. It's very simple. It's made with dado joinery and pretty much some finish nails. And I added some molding to it and stuff like that as time went on. But the basics of the cabinet were a fairly simple project, but it does teach you, because it's, that could be a medicine cabinet, that could be a kitchen cabinet, so on and so forth. So it does teach you some of the basics of actually making furniture rather than shop projects that I found, like all these stupid wall racks and different little. Sure, you're gonna learn certain sawing techniques, all that. You could do that making this. You don't need to spend hours making a chisel rack that looks fancy. I can't think of a more of a waste of your time to do something like that. And like I said, a workbench cabinet like that. Now, I said before. Now you could say, well, you're recommending a cabinet because you made one. Yeah, that's true, very true. I also made toolboxes, wall racks, jigs, so on and so forth. This is the only thing I have left. Hopefully this is in the shot. I think it is. This cabinet here is the only, and my bench, of course. But this cabinet's the only thing I saved. All the other shit is gone. I got rid of it. That's how valuable it was to me. And I of course, I learned, you learn from everything. I also learned that I would never do what I did again. That might have been the biggest lesson there. I would honestly rather take a couple strap boards and practice sawing on them than I would spending 3 hours boring out holes to make a chisel rack. Like I said, I was never more disappointed in myself in my entire life than I was that day. And hey, I'm hardly perfect. I had some bad days in my life. As a parent, as a father, that was one of my worst moments. And in the end, I only have myself to blame. But if it makes any difference, my intentions were good. In that I was foolish enough to believe that a woodworking writer had my best interests at mind when they wrote the article, and they did, and they had their best interest in mind. And that is something I will never ever let happen again. And if you're new to woodworking, maybe that's just a lesson you need to learn on your own. I don't know. But I learned it the hard way that day. And maybe that was the only way I was going to learn it. But yeah, workbenches, I would highly, if you've never made a workbench before, I would highly recommend the construction lumber route, because workbenches aren't overly difficult to make, but they're not easy. And another thing I'm going to say, it might disappoint a lot of people, I would definitely recommend using hand tools or power tools, I mean, where possible, because the legs on my workbench are like just under 5 inches square. I will personally guarantee you that you will not saw through all 4 of your workbench legs accurately. I guarantee it. you will end up the best you can hope for is getting it really close, then planing them down, planing the end grain down to the finished size. And even that is not simple. It sounds a lot easier than it is. And I can pretty much guarantee you that if you use a table saw or a miter, miter saw, chop saw, that you will be much more accurate. And that's your workbench. One thing your workbench needs is stable legs. If your legs are uneven, everything else is just going to not work right. When you go to fit your top and so on and so forth, when you like, I use a leg vise on mine. Some people don't care for leg vices. I like them because it's inexpensive and basically does everything I need it to do. I made my entire leg vise cost, I want to say at the time, we're going back, I think 2011 I made this bench. So my leg vise at that time, I think it was, including the wood, about $30. It might be a little more today, but not that much more. If you buy a pre-made, a new vise that is of good quality, you're probably going to spend over $100 for it, maybe more. Like I said, I've seen them running into the $500 range, which, unless you have a lot of, if you have a lot of spare capital laying around, hey, go for it. I don't. That's a lot of money for me, personally. At least that's more money that I want to spend on that. I'd rather go to the beach for a few days and spend $400 on a vise. So yeah, as you can gather, I'm not a fan of shop projects. And if you are, that's awesome. The whole point of this video isn't to discourage you from making shop projects. It's to really just warn you that you don't have to make shop projects to learn how to woodwork. To me, you're much better served practicing. If you're working by hand, you're much better served practicing dovetail. You're sewing your dovetails, sewing your tenons, or if you're working with power tools, practicing using your power tools, doing those things. Shop projects are an expensive waste of time, in my opinion. Now, once again, if you enjoy them, that's another matter. But if you think that, if my first project should be a shop project because that's what X Magazine told me it should be, then I would discourage you from following that advice. I found that almost every shop project in a magazine was filler because they didn't have anything else to write about that month. Nobody would have all this shit in their garage or their workshop or whatever. There's nobody would. If you do, I won't say what I think. I'll just say that I would never personally go that route. So hope you enjoyed the video. I hope you guys have a great day. Thankfully I said I'm done these storage. I'm pretty much finished with my storage reconfiguration here. So plan on making more videos again now that I've had some free time. The weather's been remarkably nice, so that's why I have been really focusing on trying to get things done that I normally, this time of year, I wouldn't be able to get done. Generally, January is pretty, it's been pretty cold, but we've been on a rain, but normally we get a lot of snow. So I had the time. The weather was nice enough where I could go in and out of my garage, leave the garage door open as I'm working, and so that's what I was doing. But once again, I should be back to making some videos that focus on woodworking over the next week or so. So thanks again for watching. Have a great day and have a great weekend.